Transfer bar? No transfer bar. What is a transfer bar? Should your gun have a transfer bar? That's what we'll be talking about today. I'm Dustin and you're watching Guns of the West. First of all, I want to mention this is the very first video here in the new Guns of the West office / YouTube studio, and I realize the audio is not great yet. Bear with me on that. I also have some ideas for things to put on the wall behind me so it's not as plain, but we'll get there. But anyway, back to the subject, transfer bar or no transfer bar. This is another one of those topics that some of you might think is overly simple, but it's one that I get questions about a lot, especially lately because I recently did a review on this Taurus Deputy. So, for those who've been asking, or those who just may not know yet, let's talk about what the transfer bar is, what it does, and if you should have one. Now, both of these are single action revolvers, and we're going to start by looking at one that does not have a transfer bar. This is a Cimarron Frontier old model, which is actually made by Pieta, and it's a very good reproduction of a very early 1873 Colt single action Army. Let's start just by having a peek to make sure it's not loaded, which of course it is not. And let's talk about transfer bar versus no transfer bar. Again, this does not have one. So what that means is when the hammer is cocked back, when the gun fires, this firing pin, which is actually attached to the hammer, let me get that right in the center so it'll focus for you, but that little pin right there makes direct contact with the primer of the ammunition cartridge to set it off. It does not need to hit anything else that will then be driven into it. This pin on the hammer is actually making direct contact. So, alternatively, let's look at one that has a transfer bar. This is the Taurus Deputy that I recently reviewed, and it is the main reason for this video. Again, I did this video and a lot of people started reaching out. And before anybody judges somebody for asking about such a simple topic, remember, we all were at a point at some point that we didn't know what a transfer bar was. So don't go too hard on people for not knowing. Well, let's again just make sure this one is not loaded, which it is not. So we'll get right into the difference between the two. If I pull this hammer back, it does not have a pin there like the other one did because it has the transfer bar. So what is that? It's that little vertical bar you see sticking up. And for comparison, notice you do not see that in the other gun. That is just wide open space in there. But this one does have that vertical piece right there. Now when I press the trigger, let me pull the trigger in, watch it go up just a little bit, and if I let down, you can see the back of that little knob. That is the firing pin itself. So if I'm pressing the trigger, as the hammer goes down, the hammer does not contact the ammunition, it contacts the transfer bar, which then hits the firing pin, which then hits the primer on the ammunition. Now, the main advantage, I would say, to the transfer bar is I can load all 6 rounds in this cylinder and it could be carried around, and if something is to hit the hammer or if the gun is dropped, it cannot fire because as long as the trigger is not pressed, that transfer bar comes down out of the way. So the hammer is just resting up here on the steel of the frame. Nothing is pressing against the firing pin, therefore nothing is pressing against the ammunition. Whereas with this gun, if I were to have all 6 loaded and I lower that, that firing pin is then resting right on a primer, so if something hits the gun or it falls, it could very easily go off. Now these do have the little quarter cock position, which was meant to be a safety, but even Colt said themselves back in 1873 in their ordnance report that it is not reliable and can easily break, so it's not really to be trusted. So again, big advantage, you can carry around all 6 in this cylinder, whereas with this one, if you really wanted to carry it around as safe as this one, you would leave one empty chamber in the cylinder for the hammer to rest on. That's often referred to as the cowboy load. I've done videos on that before. Well, anyway, I hope this explanation helped. This one you got to see how a transfer bar works, and this one you got to see is more historical and does not have a transfer bar. Well, I really hope you enjoyed this look today at a one revolver with a transfer bar and one revolver without. As for me, as far as my preference, You may already know that I like things to be as historical as possible, so when it comes to a single action revolver, I personally prefer one that does not have it, but as I said before, this is arguably safer and nothing wrong with having it. Anyway, please don't forget to click that like button down below and subscribe to the channel so you can see more videos. And as always, if you look in the description, you'll see where to find me on social media, as well as where to find all the great Guns of the West products. Thank you so much for watching.